Shalom, Israel. It's that time again. The ISUPK, under Commanding General Yahana, presents the Lord's 57th Annual Passover. That's right, the Lord's 57th Annual Passover, April 4th, 2026, in Houston, Texas. All Black, Hispanics, and Native Americans are commanded to observe the Lord's Passover. This will be the biggest Passover to date. You do not want to miss this. Fresh lamb, fresh wine, and bitter herbs as commanded by the Most High. Only $200 per person, ages 17 and up. The biggest event of the year. There is only one Passover, and it's under Commanding General Yahana. See you there, Israel. Shalom.
Train for woman in war and warlike apparel. Prefer our leaders can't get between us. Watch where you stepping.
Shalom, Israel. It's that time again. The ISUPK, under Commanding General Yahana, presents the Lord's 57th Annual Passover. That's right, the Lord's 57th Annual Passover, April 4th, 2026, in Houston, Texas. All Black, Hispanics, and Native Americans are commanded to observe the Lord's Passover. This will be the biggest Passover to date. You do not want to miss this. Fresh lamb, fresh wine, and bitter herbs as commanded by the Most High. Only $200 per person, ages 17 and up. The biggest event of the year. There is only one Passover, and it's under Commanding General Yahana. See you there, Israel. Shalom.
Train for woman in war and warlike apparel.
Out and about, you goddamn drink with your blunt and that shit, then you about to get tried out here, but don't be caught lacking and don't kill your brother off some bullshit, man. Don't hurt your people, man. This is for protection only, man. I got family out this bitch, man. I got brothers out this bitch. I gotta protect somebody trying to run up on us. We lacking. What we gonna do? Fight him? Fight a nigga with a machine gun? Now we're gonna bust your ass. We'll cut your head out and bring it back to the Lord, man. UPK shit, man. Hey, man.
Confidence, say it's a problem. All I do is try to pull a woman. They say I'm a monster, but really it ain't nothing. I'm just like my brothers. But shit, you know you look better with me, yeah. Girl, you know you look better with me. How I pull up and then shock. I do my dance on them. What the fuck? How I judge I run it up. You call me fashion girl, boy, stop, bitch. Okay, you know you look better with me. I pull up with lines. I'm a judo with a nigga pride. I'm just like a lion. My woman cook, clean, fuck, and shut the fuck up, yeah. I got bigger piles to worry about than you in adultery. But shit, you know you ain't going nowhere. Hey, taking my move with the bass. Try to walk to the place. Ice on me, come and skate. You really a hoe wanna escape. Yeah, we up, fish your face. Or outwork me, what you think? Pretty girl, good taste. Wanna know all my traits. Yeah, you know I'm on attention. I'm James Brown, did the Israel. Bullets long, yeah, extensions. The nigga hate what they mention. I pull up how I'm gifted. I'm Mike Tats with the fisting. Beat it like I'm Thriller. She say I'm obnoxious. Say I got way too much confidence. Say it's a problem. All I do is try to pull a woman. They say I'm a monster, but really it ain't nothing. I'm just like my brothers. But shit, you know you look better with me, yeah. Girl, you know you look better with me. How I pull up and then shock. I do my dance on them. What the fuck? How I judge I run it up. You call me fashion girl, boy, stop, bitch. Okay, you know you look better with me. Bitch, you basic. If you don't want a South Coast nigga, you just everybody weak, cause you don't even know how they say I'm obnoxious. Say I got way too much confidence, say it's a problem. All I do is try to pull a woman, they say I'm a monster. But really, it ain't nothing, I'm just like my brothers. But shit, you know you look better with me, yeah. Yeah, you know you look better with me. How I pull up and they in shock. I do my dance on them, what the fuck? How I chill, run it up. You call me fashion girl, boy, stop, bitch. Okay, you know you look better with me, dance. I don't know, trying to get right with the preacher, probably on the low, huh? What the fuck you talking about, girl? You already know what the fuck we on, huh? We ain't passing down bitches, but you get right, what you already know, huh? Bitch, you know you look better with me, yeah.
Shalom, Israel. Yeah, we're back to me. Yahweh Barakathon. To the brothers watching, Yahweh Shemalathon, back to me, Yahweh Shai. To the sisters watching, this is ISUPK, started at 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under Commanding General Yohana. And we teach the truth about the Bible. The truth being that so-called Black, Hispanic, and North American Indians are the chosen people of God. And our oppressor says the devil that the Bible speaks of. Now, you tuned in, priest, officer of 1,000, Howard Moore, ISUPK, Kentucky, man. Tonight is our Monday night history class. But before we get off into it, I want to invite every so-called Black, Hispanic, and North American Indian to tune in to our weekly content. Of course, Monday night, you got the history class, 9 p.m. Every Monday, Lord willing. Tuesday night, you got the Brotherhood class. Talk about Officer of 1,000. I'm a Wonga Bar, 7 p.m. And then Wednesday night, you got the podcast, the baddest podcast around, the baddest podcast in Kentucky, man. Cry Out, Spare Not podcast, hosted by Officers of 1,000. I'm a Wonga Bar and Asiapian. And come here. The biblical breakdown, the biblical solution to all the viral videos going across the internet. And Saturday morning, you got the Sabbath service. So Monday night, history class, Tuesday night, Brotherhood class, Wednesday night, the podcast, Saturday morning, Sabbath service. Now, tonight, of course, we got straight drop as usual. We finna rock it out the only way we can do it. We finna give y'all this work that you can only get in the ISUPK and the Commander General Yohana. All right, tonight we finna talk about immigration, know nothings, and ICE. All right, I know this has been it's been a trending topic lately. It's been a hot topic lately. So we finna get down into the origin of immigration. We finna talk about early immigration into the 13 colonies that later became the United States. We finna talk about anti-immigration political parties. We finna get into some people that you might not have known that their families were actually illegal immigrants. We finna talk about who the majority of undocumented people are. We're going to talk about the majority of undocumented people and who they are, and it might surprise you. All right, it might surprise you because the media will have you believe that our Hispanic brothers and sisters are the ones that are undocumented. All right, but we're going to get into the truth of who the real undocumented people are, and we're going to talk about ICE. We're going to talk about the Immigration Task Force. All right. And we finna get into some of the more some of the more nefarious practices of ICE. All right, some of the more nefarious practices of ICE. And it gets deeper than just so-called deporting so-called illegal immigrants. All right, there's a lot more nefarious things going on with ICE. So tonight we're going to talk about immigration, know nothings, and we're going to get into the truth about ICE. And again, this is work you can only get in the ISUPK under Commander General Yohana. If it's not One West, if it's not UPK, if it's not Commander General Yohana, then you were just not in the truth. All right, you were just not in the truth. So let's start. Let's go back to the beginning. All right, winter 1609 was a treacherous for early American settlers. All right, we're talking about Jamestown, Virginia. We're talking about the early English colonies and the early English colonists back in the 1600s. All right, some of the 300 colonists at Jamestown died during this period called the Starving Time. Evidence shows that they were eating their fellow colonists. So the first permanent English settlement in the New World, the so-called New World, was on the brink of failure. And these white folks was eating each other. All right. It had gotten so bad, they were so assed out that they started to eat each other. All right. Evidence suggests they were eating their fellow colonists. All right. These people couldn't get nothing moving. All right. But this was known as the first permanent English settlement in the so-called New World. All right. None of the colonists' efforts to establish profitable enterprises were successful until the first documented enslaved people arrived in Virginia in 1619. All right. So Jamestown, named after the Black King of England and Scotland at this time, also known as the same King James of the 1611 Bible. All right. These people, these white colonists, were at the point of starvation and cannibalism. All right. And it says none of the colonists' efforts to establish profitable enterprises were successful until the first documented enslaved people arrived in Virginia in 1619. So my question is, how come nobody was complaining when 20 enslaved people were brought to Virginia in 1619? All right. It says 20 and odd, meaning they don't have an exact number. All right. These are undocumented workers being brought here in chains in 1619 to get this place popping, because none of these white folks could get anything moving on their own. It wasn't until 20 and odd enslaved people, all right, the chosen people of God, arrived in chains in Virginia in 1619 that this whole thing got to moving in the first place. All right, this is the origin. This is the origin of immigration. All right, now let's fast forward a little bit. Transportation Act 1717, the Act of Parliament of Great Britain that established a regulated bonded system to transport criminals to the colonies in North America for indentured servitude. All right, so in the 1700s, all the way up until the Revolutionary War, all right, Great Britain would send their convicted criminals to the 13 colonies. All right. The foundation of America begins with immigration. The foundation of America begins with immigration. Not only do you have starving colonists in Virginia, not only do you have the chosen people of God being brought here in chains in 1619, but in the 1700s, you have Great Britain's convicted criminals being brought to the 13 colonies. All right, the British used North America as a penal colony, Convicts would be transported by private companies and sold by auction to plantation owners. Over the next 6 decades, the act's use to its American colonies, transportation of convicts and others helped supply the much-needed colonial labor, which in turn increased the production and benefit of the realm as a whole. So immigration, especially in the 1700s, dealing with the removal of Great Britain's convicted felons and being imported into the 13 colonies. All right, this increased labor production and benefited Great Britain's hold in the Americas. All right, all of this was done through immigration. Now, these convicted criminals that were shipped to the colonies, did they have work visas? Was ICE checking their paperwork? Oh, I guess immigration only matters, and it's only a concern when you're dealing with the Lord's chosen people. Let's wait. All right, 50,000 British convicts were sent to colonial America. That was 1/4 of the British settlers in the 1700s. 50,000 British convicted felons were sent to colonial North America. 50,000. Where's the ICE task force? You have 50,000. Isn't that the complaint about the Mexicans? The tribe of Issachar, the chosen people of God? Ain't that the complaint with the Mexicans? That they're screening for criminals? That they're looking for the criminals? But in the 1700s, 50,000 known convicted criminals were sent to the colonies in North America. Let's wait. And there's an image of them. Here's an image of these white criminals, these white convicted criminals being sent to America. All right. Now you fast forward to the 1800s, you have a political party called the Native American Party. Now, when you see this word or this phrase, Native American, all right, don't be confused by it. All right. Native American had a different meaning at that time than it does today. All right. Back in this time, all right, Native American was talking about white folks that were born in the United States, as opposed to a new immigrant from Scotland. All right. So it was called the Native American Party, referred to as the Know Nothing Party, was an anti-immigration political movement in the United States from the 1840s through the 1850s. Now, these people have some nerve talking about anti-immigration when their parents were immigrants. Their parents were immigrants, but just because they were born here, now they have the audacity to be anti-immigration. All right, members of the movement were required to say "I know nothing" whenever asked about its specifics by outsiders, providing the group with this colloquial name. Supporters of the Know Nothing movement believed there was a conspiracy by the Roman Catholic Church. So these people were conspiracy theorists. These folks were conspiracy theorists. All right, the party entered a period of rapid decline. In the 1850 Dred Scott decision, many former Know Nothings joined the Republican Party. All right, this is why the Republican Party today is anti-immigration. That's why Donald Trump is cracking down on immigration. That's why this ICE, this immigration task force, was started. All right, this is the origin of the Republican Party being anti-immigration. But again, it wasn't a problem when they were the immigrants. And I'm going to show you in a minute, it's not a problem with recent African immigrants. It's not a problem with immigrants from Pakistan. It's not a problem when it's immigration from Indonesia. But it's a problem when it's somebody from a Latin American country. It's a problem when it's somebody from the Caribbean. Why? Because now we're talking about the Lord's chosen people. Now we're talking about the chosen people of God. But this is why the Republican Party is anti-immigration, because the foundation of the Republican Party comes from anti-immigration. All right, let's work. Again, this is work you can only get. You can only get this in the ISUPK under Command General Young. All right. The Know Nothing movement was revived later as the American Protective Movement of the 1890s and the Ku Klux Klan of the 1920s. You ever wondered why? You ever wondered why the Republican Party is being compared to the Klan? You ever wondered why you hearing lately how ICE agents are being compared to the Klan? This is why. This is why. All right. These people were anti-immigration from the beginning, and these people were the Ku Klux Klan from the very beginning. All right, let's wait. All right, the term Native American. Remember, I told you that Native American means something different today than it did back then. All right. Back in the 1850s, Native American referred to a white political party that was anti-immigration, that merged with the Republican Party, and their philosophy was later adopted by the KKK in the 1920s. All right. Now, that term being applied to indigenous people, that doesn't start until the 1960s. All right. Prior to the 1960s, indigenous people were always called American Indian. All right. Indigenous people were always called American Indian. It wasn't until the 1960s that the terminology changed. All right. But we was always called Indians prior to that. All right. So you can miss me with that. I'm not Native American. I'm Indian, homie. All right. I'm American Indian. All right. You can miss me with that Native American talk. All right. Because it starts off with a white political party that was anti-immigration, merged with the Republican Party, and was revived in the 1920s as the Ku Klux Klan. All right. Now, if you want to call these folks Native Americans, I ain't got a problem with it. If you want to call these $5 Indians, if you want to call these folks Native American, look, I ain't got a problem with it. All right. I ain't got a problem with it. All right, let's work. Now, when we're dealing with immigration, understand that immigration was about citizenship and who citizenship was going to be applied to. All right. We just read that there was a decline in the Know Nothing Party after the Dred Scott decision. All right. The Dred Scott decision said that the descendants of American chattel slavery would never be citizens. All right. Even all of the early inventions during the Industrial Revolution, all of the inventions that Black folks invented never got credit for because of a lack of citizenship. The patent office says you have to be able to prove a nation of origin and you had to prove citizenship. Otherwise, they were going to steal your patent. And that's why so many patents were stole from Black folks in the 1800s. All right. Now, whiteness is a modern colonial invention. It was devised in the 17th century and used to provide the logic for genocide and slavery. The first recorded mention of white people comes from Thomas Middleton's play, Triumphs of Truth. As European powers colonized various parts of the world, they implemented and refined racial categories. In Barbados, labor codes described Europeans as white and gave them more rights than enslaved people. Now, what has made whiteness such an enduringly powerful tool is its nonsense logic. As writer Robert Beer recently put, how ill-defined it is as a label. It can and has been defined in whatever way best serves to consolidate power for the ruling group. Perfect example. When the Irish first came here, they weren't considered white folks. When the Italians first came here, they weren't considered white folks. So this term has changed over time to include more people. And we'll talk about why that reason is at the end of class. All right, it hinges on the fact that enslaved people had no legally recognized rights, whereas European-born servants did. Slave status was for life without recourse and inheritable. As African-American studies expert Edward Rugemer has argued, this also codified racial distinctions as a tool of mastery and was replicated in Jamaica and South Carolina. Echoing the division between enslaved people and servants, working class people in the 20th century were also pitted against each other by appeals to whiteness. So the same reason that the Italians had to work to be classified as white, and they had to distinguish themselves to be classified as white, the Irish did the same thing. All right, 1995 book, How the Irish Became White. All right, looks at 19th century Irish immigration to the U.S. He details how these working class newcomers emphasized their distance from black laborers, thereby laying claim to whiteness. So this is all what immigration has ever been about. Who was going to be accepted and who wasn't going to be accepted. All right. Now this, like I said, the legal classification for white has changed several times. Today, it's a person with origins in Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. All right. They've expanded the classification, and we'll talk about why in a minute. Slide. All right, we'll talk about why the classification changed. Now, there was a North African who some years back, when he attained citizenship, is talking about Mustafa Hefni from Egypt. It's a lot here. All right, so Mustafa Hefni, since he was from North Africa, he was classified as white. And here he goes. So you see, they'll accept somebody from North Africa with no problem. They'll accept somebody from North Africa. They'll accept somebody from India. They'll accept somebody from Pakistan. But when it comes to Haiti, that's a no-go. When it comes to Mexico, that's a no-go. Because now you're dealing with the Lord's chosen people. Now, we all seen this. And again, the Republican Party tried to make this out to be not a big deal. But we all saw this. And they want to try to make it seem like we didn't see what we thought we saw. But Elon Musk does have a Nazi background. Elon Musk does have a Nazi background. Now this is we're talking about Elon Musk's family. All right. Pro-Nazi African and nationalist organization with strong ties to the Nazi Party. And this was the party after World War II that started apartheid in South Africa. All right, this is Elon Musk's family. This is Elon Musk's family. Also, something else you might not have known is Elon Musk. Elon Musk was an illegal immigrant. Him and his brother both. Elon Musk and his brother were illegal immigrants. But when they do it, it's cool. When a white South African comes here illegally, that's fine. When you have people from North Africa come here, they get classified as white. When the majority of undocumented people come from Asia, that's fine. It's only a problem when it comes to the Lord's chosen people. It's only a problem when it comes to the Mexicans. It's only a problem when it comes to the Haitians. Now, Donald Trump, Donald Trump is bringing these same South Africans here. Donald Trump is bringing these same South Africans here. All right, the Afrikaners are a white ethnic minority, mostly of Dutch and German ancestry. All right, the South African government said the U.S. allegations that Afrikaners are being persecuted are completely false, the result of an inaccurate view of its country. It cited the fact that Afrikaners are among the richest and most successful in the country, and they are amongst the most privileged economically. So these white folks in South Africa, your white South Africans, these are the people that are the most economically privileged, the richest, and the most successful people in the country. But the media is trying to show how persecuted these people are, and now they have no problems coming here. All right, Donald Trump is bringing them here first class. Again, if a white person from South Africa wants to come here, it's no problem. When somebody from Afghanistan wants to come here, it's no problem. When somebody from Pakistan wants to come here, somebody from Egypt wants to come here, somebody from Indonesia wants to come here, it's no problem. When a Mexican wants to come here, build a wall. And again, these white South Africans were the leaders of the apartheid system of white minority that ended in 1994. In 2025, a group of white South Africans were granted refugee status and arrived in the United States. The arrival was part of a controversial policy by President Trump, which focused on prioritizing resettlements of these white South Africans. So like I said, if it's a white South African, if it's an Egyptian, if it's a Pakistani, if it's somebody from Afghanistan, it's not a problem. When it's a Haitian, put them under a bridge in Mexico and cartel territory. If it's a Mexican, build a wall. But anybody else can come here, no problem. Let's work. Now, let's talk about Donald Trump's family. Let's talk about Donald Trump's family. Frederick Trump was swept into the United States in one of the biggest mass waves in migration history. During the 1880s and 1890s, 1.8 million Germans immigrated to various European and overseas destinations. These overseas destinations was the United States. When young Frederick arrived in New York in 1885, around 200,000 of his compatriots had already settled in the metropolis, forming the distinct Little Germany. After working 6 years as a barber, he was caught up in the gold rush, moved west, and opened up a chain of restaurants and hotels in Washington. Hospitality did not only include food and lodging, but also alcohol and prostitution. Not only food and lodging, but alcohol and prostitution. So, is it a reason why Donald Trump is a 35-time convicted felon? Is there any reason why Donald Trump is a 35-time convicted felon? It's in his damn blood. It's in his blood. His family was criminals. His family was criminals. By 1901, he made a small fortune, decided to return to his hometown in Germany. He married his childhood sweetheart and planned to settle down. But the Bavarian authorities wouldn't let him. They claimed he had left Germany as an illegal immigrant, evading taxes and in compulsory 2-year military service. He pleaded, but to no avail. The Trumps were evicted and resettled to New York. Donald Trump's family were illegal immigrants. Illegal immigrants, tax evaders, pimps, and bootleggers. Donald Trump's family were illegal immigrants, tax evaders, pimps, and bootleggers. Is it any wonder Donald Trump is a 35-time convicted felon? It's in his blood. It's in his blood. Now, who's the real undocumented immigrant? One out of every 7 Asian immigrants is undocumented. Immigrants from India, China, the Philippines, and Korea accounted for 75% of the total unauthorized immigrant population. Immigrants from India, China, the Philippines, and Korea account for 75% of the total unauthorized immigrant population. Not the Haitians. Not the Haitians. Not the Mexicans. The people from India, China, the Philippines, and Korea are 75% of the unauthorized immigrant population. But they want you to think it's Haitians. They want you to think it's Mexicans. All right. Why? Because Haitians and Mexicans are the chosen people of God. And that's it. All right. We have been at war with white folks since the very beginning. And these other nations, as the Bible says, are confederate against us. All these other nations are confederate against us. All of these heathen nations are confederate against us. Against the Lord's chosen people. Now, let's prove it. All right, most Mexicans from Texas can trace their family back to the colonial period, even before Texas becomes a state. Most Mexicans from Texas can trace their family back to the colonial period, even before Texas becomes a state. The vast majority of Mexicans in Texas were already living in that region before 1848. This is important. All right, the majority of Texans of Mexican descent had been in the area before 1848 and predated the Mexican-American War and the annexation of Texas by the United States. All right, most Mexicans from Texas can trace their lineage, can trace their family before 1848, before Texas becomes a state, before the Mexican-American War. Why is 1848 important? Well, the majority of white folks in America are descended from homesteaders. The majority of white Americans are descendants of homesteaders. Meaning, the majority of white Americans can trace their family to immigrants that came to the United States between 1862 and 1934. The majority of white Americans today can trace their family All right. The majority of white Americans today can trace their family back to immigrants that came here between 1862 and 1934. However, the majority of Mexicans in Texas have been there since before 1848, meaning the Mexicans have been here longer than you. The Mexicans have been here in Texas longer than white folks have. The majority of Mexicans from Texas, families have been there since before 1848. The majority of white Americans, their families came here between 1862 and 1934. The Mexicans have been here longer. I'm sorry. Mexicans have been here longer. If anybody should have built the wall, the Mexicans should have built the wall for you. Between 1862 and 1934, when all these white folks were coming here, including Donald Trump's family, that's when the wall should have been built. That's when the wall should have been built. Now, how did they come up? You know, it's a myth. We always hear that these white folks pulled themselves up by their own bootstrap. All right, it was a massive transfer of land ownership from the federal government to individual citizens. All right, and inaugurated a series of land rushes during which homesteaders rushed in to settle the land on the first come, first served basis. So when these homesteaders were coming here in the late 1800s, early 1900s, they were given land to come here. They were getting bribed to come here. They were getting money to come here, and they were given land. All right. After the Compromise of 1877 removed federal protections for Black Americans in the South, it became clear that anyone who attempted to resist racial oppression would be subjected to vigilante justice at the hands of the KKK or other white supremacist organizations. Now, why were Black Americans in this mix trying to make a claim to all this land that was being given to immigrants? Why did Black Americans even care that all of this land was being given to newcomers from Europe? Well, this is why. The destruction of the Freedmen's Bank. All right, the Freedmen's Bank at this time was the only bank that would bank with Black Americans and American Indians. All right, the destruction of the Freedmen's Bank records was both deliberate and systematic. All right, the destruction of the Freedmen's Bank records was both deliberate and systemic, and it played a major role in severing financial, land, and legal ties for hundreds of thousands of Black and Aboriginal descended people. All right, the Freedmen's Bank was the only bank that would bank with Black Americans and indigenous people. When the bank fell apart, something happened to the records. And it played a major role in severing financial, land, and legal ties for hundreds of thousands of Black and Aboriginal descended people. All right, this is where all of this land was coming from. All right, after the bank failed, 1874, the main office in D.C. caught fire. Bank books were lost, ledgers were lost, personal deposit slips were lost, and documentation of pensions, wages, and property associated with the deposits. So the bank failed 1874. The main office in D.C. caught fire, and bank books, ledger records, deposit slips, pensions, wages, and property deeds were all mysteriously lost in a fire. All right. Courthouse fires in Seminole and Orange County, 1875 to 1905, destroyed land deeds and banking paperwork. Property sales went to immigrants. Property sales went to immigrants and were conducted after such fires without documentation because the previous owners couldn't combat the sale. In cases where freedmen sued banks for deposit losses Judges often declared the records had perished or were inconclusive. So what happened was thousands of Black and indigenous people that were banking at the Freedmen's Bank, thousands of Black and indigenous people lost their life savings and lost their property when these banks caught fire. And the sales of these lands that were just lost were being given to these new immigrants that were coming here from Europe. This is how all of this land was given to immigrants that were coming here in the late 1800s up until the early 1900s. Late 1800s to the early 1900s. All right. Land deeds that were supposedly burnt up in the loss of the Freedmen's Bank. All right. Immigrants were being given this property. And Black and indigenous people, we lost our life savings here. And what we used to own, especially in the South, was being given to new white immigrants from Europe. These people didn't pull themselves up by their own bootstrap. They were given everything that was stolen from the Freedmen's Bank. All of the land deeds that was stolen out the Freedmen's Bank when it mysteriously caught fire, all of this was the land that was given to these homesteaders. And now today, the majority of white Americans today are descended from these people that came here from Europe between the late 1800s and early 1900s, and they came up off of the theft of the Freedmen's Bank. They came up off the loss of Black and indigenous people. Again, this is work you can't get nowhere else. This is work you can't get nowhere else besides the ISUPK and the Commander General. Now let's talk about ICE. We talked about the history of immigration. Let's talk about ICE. ICE is harassing indigenous people right now. ICE is harassing indigenous people right now in Minnesota. Let's work. All right, 5 Native American men have been detained and an unknown number questioned by immigrant officers across Minneapolis in the midst of what top officials call the largest immigration raid ever. After 2,000 immigration and custom enforcement agents arrived in Minneapolis this week, indigenous residents on the city's south side have witnessed agents question and detain community members. Blocks away from a local Native American housing community, a 37-year-old mother was shot by ICE agents on Wednesday, sparking nationwide protests. I think some of them don't know what they're doing or where they're at. All right. Says the director of Indigenous Peoples Movement. They're just pulling people over at random if you're brown. They're just pulling folks over, harassing folks, pulling people out of their car, handcuffing them, detaining people. All right. ICE is harassing indigenous people in Minnesota right now. All right. Minneapolis Southside, particularly around Franklin Avenue, has historically been an area for indigenous people. Southside housing was first taken by the indigenous community in 1975. And since then, the area has become the center for indigenous community. On Tuesday, ICE agents attempted to enter Little Earth Housing Project property. Little Earth is the first Native American community housing project in the United States. Property manager told ICT that they informed the ICE that they would not welcome and turn agents away. Early Friday morning, ICE agents attempted to detain another Native American community member, the co-founder of Indigenous Peoples Movement, who was sitting in her car down the street from the Powwow Grounds coffee shop. The coffee shop workers told ICT they ran outside to stop the agency and protect Dion, who recorded the incident on Facebook Live. At least one of the men has been freed after a 12-hour hold, but the community is unaware of his whereabouts. A community advocate from Homeward Bound, a Southside Homeless Advocacy Center told ICT on Friday. So we have ICE harassing indigenous people in Minnesota. So now we're going to talk about another incident that involved a 20-year-old. We're going to talk about another incident in Minnesota. All right. Jose Ramirez found himself sitting in the back of a blacked out Ford SUV, his hands cuffed behind his back as immigration agents mocked and teased him Thursday morning. This is recent. The 20-year-old was forcibly detained by ICE agents despite being a United States citizen and a Red Lake Nation descendant. All right. ICE is harassing indigenous people who are citizens of the United States. You never hear about ICE harassing Korean people. You never hear about ICE harassing people from India. You never hear about ICE harassing any of these folks. But we just read that there's 75% of the undocumented immigrants over here. But right now, ICE is spending its time harassing indigenous people that are citizens of the United States. The white man is the devil that the Bible speaks of. It had been less than 24 hours after immigration agents shot and killed a 37-year-old mother on the south side of Minneapolis, near a historically significant neighborhood for indigenous people. Ramirez was on his way out to his auntie house in Crystal, Minnesota from McDonald's when he noticed he was being tailed by a blacked out SUV. With anxiety, he called his auntie for advice. She told him to pull over by a nearby grocery store and wait for her. At the Hy-Vee grocery store parking lot, a video of Sosa Carla's Facebook shows agents striking Ramirez multiple times on his head and face and dragging him out of his auntie vehicle. Ramirez said his phone was slapped out of his hand by an agent before the agent began repeatedly striking him on the face and neck. Ramirez said multiple times he tried to inform the agents he was a U.S. citizen and descendant of a federally recognized tribe, but his words fell on deaf ears. I felt like I was kidnapped, he said. It's been more than 24 hours since his detainment. Ramirez still has bruises on his wrists and the back of his neck. Once he was inside, agents questioned him. They told him he had allegedly assaulted an officer who had been sent to the hospital and that charges were pending. He was told he'd be sent to federal prison and that he ruined his life. At no point was he informed why he was trailed by the officers or apprehended. As of Friday, no charges have been brought against him, and ICE has not responded to ICT's request for comment regarding why Ramirez was detained. Well, we know why. Because we're talking about the chosen people of God. All right. And we've been at battle. We've been at war with our oppressor since the beginning. All right. The Bible says that the two twins fought in the womb. The Bible says the two twins fought in the womb. We've been at war with our oppressor since the beginning. All right. Other community members have reported agents stopping them without reason and requesting identification. Nearly a day after he was freed and bruises remaining from detainment, Ramirez says he is still shocked by Thursday's events. Ramirez said while he was waiting in the Whipple building, he met with the public defender and was released not long after. He was released around 5:30 Central Time, a little over 6.5 hours after he was initially detained. So again, we have ICE harassing indigenous people that are United States citizens. We have ICE harassing and detaining indigenous people who are citizens of the United States. But Nazis from South Africa, Trump rolls out the red carpet for. Nazis from South Africa, white South African Nazis, Donald Trump rolls out the red carpet for. Koreans, East Indians are 75% of America's undocumented immigrants. And we never hear nothing about it. But indigenous people that are citizens of the United States are being harassed and detained by ICE. Like this 20-year-old young brother here. This 20-year-old young brother was harassed and detained by ICE. And he's a United States citizen. But again, because we're talking about the chosen people of God, we've been at war with our oppressor since the womb. Again, the Bible says that the twins fought in the womb. All right, let's drop that. Let's drop that. Democracy is nothing more than mob rule, where 51% of the people take away the rights of the other 49. And here's what the problem is. Earlier, we talked about why the United States government expanded what the definition of white is. Okay, according to the United States, white isn't just a white person from Europe. We're also talking about anybody from North Africa and the Middle East. All right, when they say white, they're not just talking about a white person from Europe. They're talking about any of the original people of Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. Now, the reason they're expanding the definition of what white is because they know that they're going to be a minority by 2025. There's already 5 states in the United States where white folks are the minority. There's already 5 states where white folks are the minority. And in 2045, that's going to be the case everywhere. All right, these people are slowly going extinct. The Lord is slow walking. The Lord is slow walking white folks into extinction. The Lord is slow walking white folks into extinction. And this is the battle that we're fighting with our enemy. This is the battle we're fighting with our enemy. All right, by 2045, white folks are going to be a minority all across the United States. All right, let's drop that. And let's get into, like I said, there's something more nefarious going on right now with ICE. It's not just about searching out criminals. It's not just about searching out illegal immigrants, but it's getting a lot deeper. All right, ICE deports 3 American children. One of the children removed from the country has a rare form of cancer and was deported without medication. The National Immigration Project said the mothers weren't given a fair opportunity to decide whether they wanted the children to remain in the United States. What we saw from ICE over the last several days is horrifying and baffling. Families have been ripped apart unnecessarily. And we should be greatly concerned that ICE has been given approval to detain and deport U.S. citizen children. All right, what we saw from ICE over the last several days is horrifying, and families have been ripped apart unnecessarily. And ICE has been given the approval to detain and deport children. To detain and deport children. Now, what's going on with these children? What's going on with these children? ICE employee among 16 men arrested in Bloomington sex trafficking sting, police say. What's going on with these children that are being detained and deported? ICE employee among 16 men arrested in Bloomington sex trafficking sting. This is what's going on with ICE. Like I said, it's about more than just looking for criminals. It's about more than just looking for illegals. But they're deporting and detaining children. Why? ICE employee arrested in sex trafficking sting. More than a dozen men had been arrested after trying to solicit a minor for sex in Bloomington, Minnesota. According to the police chief, officers started the 3-day sting on November 5th. All right, a dozen men have been arrested for trying to solicit a minor for sex in Bloomington, Minnesota. One of the men is an employee for Immigration and Customs Enforcement. So if you want to know what's going on with these children that are being detained and deported, this is what's happening. This is what's happening. All right, an ICE officer, an employee for Immigration and Customs Enforcement, has been busted in a sex trafficking ring. This is who we're dealing with. This is who we're dealing with. All right, let's drop that. Let's drop that. Let's go into the Bible. Deuteronomy 28:47, because thou servest not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart for the abundance of all things. All right, our ancestors in the land of Israel, all right, didn't serve the Lord. All right, our ancestors written about in the book of Deuteronomy didn't serve the Lord with joyfulness and with gladness of heart for the abundance of all things. So there was going to come a curse for not serving the Lord. There was going to come a curse on the descendants of the children of Israel. Verse 48, therefore thou shalt serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and of want of all things. He shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. So because our ancestors in the land of Israel, because they didn't serve the Lord said he's going to send an enemy against us. And we're going to want for all things. We're going to want for all things. And he's going to put a yoke of iron upon our neck. He's going to put a yoke of oppression on our neck until he has destroyed us. Now, this enemy, Deuteronomy 28:49, the Lord shall bring a nation against thee from afar, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. All right. This nation that's going to come from afar, this is going to be an immigrant. All right. These are going to be immigrants. As swift as the eagle flieth. There's your hint. All right. The eagle is the symbol for all these European nations. And a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. Have you ever heard the expression, white man speaks with a forked tongue? White man speaks with a forked tongue? All right, this is giving you a clue about this nation that's going to come from afar. This immigrant that's going to come from afar, as swift as the eagle flieth, and a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. Verse 50. A nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of old, nor show favor to the young. All right, a nation of fierce countenance, of fierce people, which will not regard the person of old, nor show favor to the young. Then we just read about how ICE pretty much kidnapped this young brother, this 20-year-old. Then we just read about how ICE detained this young 20-year-old for 6 hours for no reason. Harassed him, beat him up, cuffed him, threw him in a black SUV, and detained him for 6 hours with no charges, with no reason for stopping him, with nothing. All right, this is a fierce nation that does not show favor to the young. All right, let's drop that. And let's end it with Obadiah 1:10. All right, the Lord isn't going to let this happen forever. All right. We served our punishment because of our ancestors, because our ancestors sinned against God. All right. We served our punishment for it. All right. But the Lord isn't going to let this happen forever. All right. Obadiah 1:10, for thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. So for the violence committed against us, for the violence committed against the Lord's chosen people, for the violence against this young 20-year-old that was just pulled out of his car, beat up, cuffed, and detained for 6 hours without cause by ICE agents, shame is going to cover these people. And they're going to be cut off forever. Didn't we just read by 2045 that white folks are going to be the minority everywhere? There's already 5 states right now where white folks are the minority. But by 2045, it's going to be all across the United States. All right, the Lord is slow walking white folks to extinction. All right, the Lord is slowly slow walking white folks to extinction. All right, so with that, I appreciate y'all hanging out with me, man. Appreciate y'all chopping it up with me. Appreciate y'all soaking up some of this game. Again, every Monday night, Lord willing, ISUPK Kentucky Monday night history class, 9 p.m. Tuesday night brotherhood class taught by Office of 1,000. I'm Warren Bar. Wednesday night the podcast, Cry Out Spirit Not podcast, and Saturday morning Sabbath service. With that, we'll do one courtesy salute. Shalom. Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shabbarakathon. To the brothers watching. Shalom. Yahweh Shemarathon Ba'Shem Yahweh Shah. The sisters watching. And with that, class is dismissed.
West nigga, till they put me in the break. I don't give a love about what them niggas gotta say. I'm a West nigga, till they put me in the grave. I don't care about what they say. Hey. Fuck with my Akima, fuck with my sisters, then I got a problem, I'm never gonna miss you. I got 100 hanging out the AR, I got a 50 hanging out the pistol. He say it's corner, I'm just being realistic. I be on them corner posted with the realest. If it's the Sabbath, then we going fishing. I'm reeling them in, that's a God-given mission. I'm really on 10, but I'm stamped in the pistol. I get the order, be glad of this mission. Hebrew Academy graduate, nigga. Training, go through the baddest conditions. I don't fuck with none but the baddest of bitches. She righteous, submissive, she glad to be with me. Had that thing Putin like Vladimir, nigga. She know I'm a prophet, she got to be listening. Disrespect, I ain't having that shit. Tell her go make some business from scratch. She bitchin' the different breed of black men. We don't do the back bend. I remember back when I was really trapping, trying to get the racks in, selling dope to black men. But now I'm trying to make it straight. Like, don't forget about my face. We standing up straight, can't fold us. Too heavy, the world won't hold us. Go get you some rank, I told you. Line up in these ranks, we soldier. You can take that to the bank, we focus on. How many times must we remind you? One body, one rest. One break off, but never take off as a flex. When the law with you ain't no up next. It's just us, nigga, that's that on that. All that weak shit, that ain't no threat. Say you won't beat, bitch, with that ain't no sweat. We with all that. The Lord called a nigga out the world. I responded and called back. Oh Lord. And everything that they stole from us, fuck that shit, we want all that. Them niggas snitching and they act like bitches. That's why we unaffiliated with them. They killing women and they fuck with sisters. That's why we unaffiliated with them. They telling lies, switching up the doctrine. That's why we unaffiliated with them. They ain't gon' ride until they die, so that's why we unaffiliated with them. Come on the commanding general, your hunter, we unaffiliated with them. Like with they tongue and they say they keep that shit 100, we unaffiliated with them. They telling lies, switching up the doctrine, that's why we unaffiliated with them. They ain't gon' ride until they die, so that's why we unaffiliated with them. That's why we unaffiliated with them. I cannot fuck around with fake niggas. We taking ground, we in your city. You better have the women, have the liquor. Keep that bitch on me, please don't butt the system. Don't be a fool and be another victim. Say you a goon, you just another Christian. How you my brother, you ain't in here with me. We in the gutter, deep down in the trenches. We with them niggas locked up in the prison. Fucking Hispanic, Native American, Indian, we ain't just talking kingdom of heaven. You niggas get wet up by me cause I'm fed up by ISUPK. My niggas won't let up, got choppers, got 9s, AKs, Berettas. You say you don't like me, you say you won't fight with me and my nigga like bitch or whatever. You say you don't like me, you say you won't fight with me and my nigga like, them niggas snitching and they act like bitches. That's why we unaffiliated with them. They killing women and they fuck with sisters. That's why we unaffiliated with them. They telling lies, switching up the doctrine. That's why we unaffiliated with them. They ain't gon' ride until they die, so that's why we unaffiliated with them. Come on, the commanding general, your hunter, we unaffiliated with them. Like they tongue and they say they keep that shit 100, we unaffiliated with them. They telling lies, switching up the doctrine. That's why we unaffiliated with them. They ain't gon' ride until they die, so that's why we unaffiliated with them. Yeah. See, they always ask us like, why y'all fuck with such and such? Why y'all won't come together with such and such? I be like, we unaffiliated with them. Understand me? Like, niggas be out here on some weirdo shit. And to be honest, that's why we unaffiliated with them. Hey, that's why we unaffiliated with them. Yeah.